Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
On March 20th, 2003, 53-year-old Ramona Krotine could have used an escape from reality. Her household was under stress from current events taking place across the world. Her son Jason was in the military in the Gulf War, as the United States invasion into Iraq had just begun. The family's television was regularly tuned in to news coverage, and they were on edge, worrying. Ramona's mind was constantly on her son. The timing was perfect for exhibitors and vendors from the nearby Expo Center in downtown Cleveland, where she ran her fudge business, to hold an annual party. The event, held in a hotel, drew a crowd of 125 people and was full of lighthearted moments, like veteran employees shooting silly string at the rookie workers to initiate them. There would be drinking and dancing, too. One friend recalled how Ramona got rid of her tennis shoes and put on her dancing shoes. Ramona mingled with her friends and exhibitors and other vendors who sold coffee and nuts at the Expo Center. It seemed like she was soaking up their company. Known for being a social butterfly, she was reportedly the kind of person who would dance with everybody. According to the other partygoers, Ramona seemed to be having a good time. A close friend recalled her leaving around 2:30 a.m. on what was now March 21st. Some of the partygoers were talking about grabbing breakfast later at a diner as they parted ways, and said their farewells under the hotel canopy outside. The sky was still dark. Ramona was tired but promised her friends she would see about joining them. She left their invitation up in the air. One of her friends looked over several times and watched as Ramona walked to her car. This next part is from the police report. However, when the friend reached her own car, she could no longer see Ramona or her car. That was the last time she had seen or spoken to Ramona. And then Ramona Krotine disappeared. This is Jillian, and in partnership with Law and Crime, you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 161. Ramona Krotine missed her Friday morning nail appointment, something uncharacteristic of her. She never showed up to work that day either. Immediately, Ramona's sister and her friends were worried. Everyone assumed she must have had too much to drink at the party, but there was no record of Ramona checking in and getting a room at the hotel. Her loved ones eventually called hospitals and drove around town looking for her. Her husband, Jeffrey, told police he woke up around 6 or 6:30 Friday morning and realized his wife still wasn't home. His daughter Jennifer would later say he seemed more angry than concerned. He went through the usual motions of the day: coffee, reading the newspaper, watching the news, keeping a close eye for any information about the Middle East and the war. He told Jennifer to call him when Ramona came back. Then he went off to work at his State Farm insurance business in Cleveland, stopping at the bank to make a deposit first. He called later at 11:30 a.m. to check in with Jennifer. Was Ramona back yet? No sign of her, his daughter told him. It was then, Jennifer said, she could sense fear in her father's voice. Jennifer, a college student, went to the Clarion Hotel where the party had been held to look for her mother's car, but it wasn't there. Jeffrey left work at 3:30 and then ran a series of errands. He got home around 5:30. Ramona still wasn't there when Jeffrey returned home. Jennifer and her aunt told him that they were concerned enough and had gone in person to a local police department to try and report her missing. They were told they needed to wait 24 hours to file an official missing persons report. They then tried at another police agency. Authorities eventually started searching too, checking the parking lots of other nearby hotels, restaurants, and shopping plazas for Ramona's gray Toyota Camry. Then, just after 11 p.m. on Friday, Ramona's brother, Greg, came across her car parked at a public transit station in Brook Park. Her purse and money bags from her work were laid out on the car seats. He seemed to have a foreboding sense of where his sister was. According to the police report, quote, he feared that she might be locked in the trunk of her car. Greg told police he was going to break the car window to gain access to the trunk. And when he did, he made a gruesome discovery. Ramona's body was inside. The left side of Ramona's head had an obvious and serious wound. Blood pooled inside the trunk and was dripping out of the car and onto the rear tire. Her shirt had been partially pulled up, so her back was exposed. Her back and buttocks had marks on them. Her belt had been broken. Her right tennis shoe was off. Investigators believed someone had rummaged through her purse since her makeup, glasses, cigarettes, checkbook, lighter, and papers were scattered around in the car. The purse had been dumped onto the floorboard. Her car keys were missing. Just hang in there, the 911 dispatcher tried to comfort Greg. And don't touch anything. It seemed like Ramona and her husband Jeffrey were polar opposites. She was the outgoing one. She had a lot of friends and liked going dancing. She was a people person, known as the Fudge Lady, since she ran a fudge business at the Expo Center. She worked hard, pulling 30 to 80 hours a week. Jeffrey ran his own insurance company. He was quieter and had a history of fallouts from his business associates. Some of Ramona's friends and family said they hadn't connected with Jeffrey and weren't very close with him. Jeffrey was also a survivor. He was a Vietnam War veteran. And later in his life, at age 51, he walked away from a disaster. He had been a passenger in a boat that had capsized in Lake Erie's 56-degree water. According to the Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper, there had been 4 to 6 foot waves that day. The boat's owner, who was a local attorney, died. Ramona and Jeffrey, despite their different personalities, had been married for years since meeting in college at Kent State University and were the parents of 3 grown children. They lived in a Midwestern 2-story, 4-bedroom house covered in siding on the southern edge of Cleveland in a city called Parma. One close friend of Ramona's said the couple seemed to live separate lives, and Jeffrey worked a lot, but that Ramona seemed to be happy. Ramona and Jeffrey had just gotten home from a cruise and reportedly had a great time before she was killed. Jeffrey's reaction to Ramona's death seemed off to the police officer who informed him that his wife's body had been found. The officer delivered the news at Jeffrey and Ramona's home. According to the police report, Jeffrey went through the motion of crying without shedding any real tears. He also didn't ask how his wife had died, which struck the officer as odd since Ramona hadn't been sick or in poor health, so her death should have been unexpected. The officer told him he needed to go to the police station. He wrote in his report, quote, "Husband went into the bathroom and started to splash water in his face and hair. Husband then refused to let us in his room and closed the door. Husband then also closed the door after exiting the room." The tears never came, the report noted. Jeffrey's response to his wife's death was interpreted differently, however, later on. He was in bad health. He had a heart condition and had bypass surgery 5 years earlier. Authorities seemed to be sensitive about that as they interviewed him. and in another police report noted he appeared to be taking Ramona's death hard. At one point, he even seemed like he was having a heart attack, although it turned out to be a false alarm. In the coroner's office, Dr. Sellingham determined Ramona had been struck by a blunt object 6 or 7 times to the side of the head and shot in the neck. Her death had been a violent one. He observed, quote, what appeared to be a hole in the right side of her neck, possible from a puncture, which was later determined to be from a possible 9mm bullet. Dr. Sellingham also saw signs that Ramona had fought for her life. Her fingernails were chipped or broken on both hands, and her hands were bruised and cut up. She looked like she had been dragged, which explained her broken belt. There were no signs of sexual assault, he noted. Knowing that Ramona was last seen in the early morning hours after the party, the coroner's office determined that she must have been murdered shortly after that. In Ohio, the case immediately began attracting media attention. An overnight murder leaves one family and local police puzzled, said a story by the WKYC news station. The motive? It's under investigation. Investigators wanted to know if Ramona's murderer could have been someone from the work party. Her coworkers analyzed every interaction they had, reporting anyone who was drunk or who had acted strange or obnoxious. One woman at the party complained about someone named Don, who was, quote, highly intoxicated and constantly annoying her. Officers interviewed Don, who had a criminal record for felonious assault that was later reduced to less serious charges. Another person told police 3 men were acting suspiciously in the parking lot around 2:35 a.m. One exhibitor had a memory of a man who was irritated that night for some reason. He was from Alaska and just passing through. There had been a history of robberies at the Expo Center, one person said, who couldn't provide more details. Investigators checked to see why 3 booth exhibitors had packed up early, requesting to leave the Expo show before it officially ended on Sunday afternoon. The exhibitors said they had family emergencies or family commitments. This from the police report. Quote, the persons taking care of the 3 booths seemed to have credible reasons for needing to leave the show and did not indicate deception while being interviewed. However, the reasons they gave to leave have not been checked for accuracy. Another theory. Could Ramona have been killed over a robbery? Ramona ran 3 fudge stands in the Expo Center and carried cash out after her shift ended. The money bags were found inside her car. She had never expressed concern to anybody for her safety, walking out late at night with cash. She had had nothing to fear before. Jeffrey Krotine was cooperating. He signed a form allowing Brook Park Police to search the couple's home on March 29, 2003. But he said something that concerned a police officer enough to write it up as departmental information in the police report. As they tried to learn more about Ramona's habits and routines, it came out that a fudge stand employee occasionally drove Ramona's car to pick up food during the expo shows. Jeffrey looked right at the officer when he heard the revelation he hadn't been aware of before. She better not have done that, or I would put a bullet in her head, he said. Everyone else reportedly became quiet, their gazes fixed on him. Jeffrey's son, Jeffrey Jr., quickly spoke up. He's only kidding, he said. He then looked at his father. Don't even kid about that. Investigators were also learning about the intimate details of Jeffrey and Ramona's marriage. They had received an anonymous tip that Jeffrey was having an affair with a woman at his work. The employee's name was Mary, according to the police report. Ramona's sister told police that Ramona had no idea her husband was seeing anybody else. Detectives went to the home to question Jeffrey again on May 29th. Jeffrey quietly and quickly confided to an officer when they stepped away from the rest of the family that Ramona had gone on a boat with an exhibitor from the Expo Center 10 years earlier. Ramona had kept it a secret from Jeffrey, who had discovered on his own what he clearly felt was a betrayal. Ramona's brother-in-law and others would dismiss the notion outright that Ramona had ever been with anybody else other than her husband. She had never shown even a hint of having a love interest on the side, they later told the police. Jeffrey also wanted police to know that he was involved in a lawsuit at work. The detectives never got a chance to privately confront Jeffrey about rumors of his own affair, however, because Jeffrey insisted that all of his family members, like his sister-in-law, stay beside him as he was interviewed. And the interview was interrupted. Jeffrey heard a noise upstairs catching his attention. It was their daughter Jennifer, who was leading a detective on a tour of the house. "Who's upstairs?" Jeffrey asked. According to the police report, he then got up from his chair in the family room and went upstairs. Jeffrey made it clear he didn't want any detectives going into his bedroom that he had shared with Ramona. That was too private and off limits. Soon, Jeffrey wouldn't talk so freely with the police. Detective Lambert tried to reach out to him again, but he had retained an attorney and refused to talk. He promised to talk to them later. His attorney insisted police submit their questions in writing first. According to the police report, quote, his client felt we should be looking at all the people from the party and the expo center rather than him. The investigation continued, even without Jeffrey's help. In those pre-Uber days, police contacted the local taxi companies to see if they picked up any suspicious late-night passengers in the area. No one had. They also interviewed public transit riders, trying to pinpoint how long Ramona's car had been in the parking lot. About 2 weeks after Ramona's death, a detective was piecing together her last day and how far she would have traveled to get from point A to point B when he drove past the family's house. He noticed something that was hard to miss. Beige carpet and floor padding was rolled up and lying in the front yard. He started doing surveillance. The next day, he spoke with the workers who had dropped off 55 yards of carpet at Jeffrey's home. Jeffrey had ordered new green carpet on April 10th, about 3 weeks after Ramona's death. Right away, the carpet installers knew Jeffrey wasn't a typical customer. One installer said he was struck by how weird Jeffrey was. Jeffrey had a temper and yelled at them from the moment they arrived. Another installer said Jeffrey followed them around and, quote, seemed to be more worried as to what they might see and not on how good a job they were doing. Yet another installer remembered a section of carpet that was about 4 by 6 cut out from the master bedroom. The padding had been removed too. According to the police report, quote, no explanation was given about it or why it was missing. Also from the police report, quote, the installer also stated that Jeffrey was concerned about the disposal of the carpet and wanted to know if the installers took it or if he had to get rid of it. They advised him the homeowner usually disposes of it. Jeffrey said he didn't want the carpet sitting around for a week until the following Monday's garbage day. So ultimately, the installers, who although they weren't thrilled by Jeffrey, did him a favor and hauled it away. The detective noted Jeffrey had lied to them. The garbage collection from his home was really later in the week. By luck, Jeffrey's old carpet and floor padding hadn't been disposed of yet. It sat in a dumpster at a warehouse. The Brook Park Police Department were able to get a closer look at it, thanks to Special Agent John Soraya, who used a special light to look for blood. Sure enough, there were 4 spots that tested positive for blood. The carpet was sent over for DNA testing. On May 14th, investigators got the news that it was Ramona's blood, matching her DNA, that was found on those carpet spots. Looking closer, the coroner's office could see 5 new spots of blood, including 2 places that were located next to the cutout Jeffrey took out. And they could see more: a footprint and a heel print, and what looked like drips and wipe marks from someone trying to clean up the blood. Police obtained a search warrant for Jeffrey's house, his office, and his Mercedes. It turned out that his remodeling plans were more expansive than just the carpet. Jennifer, his daughter, told police in a May 27th interview that her father had destroyed the headboard on his bed the weekend after Ramona's funeral. He cut the headboard into pieces and then burned it in the fireplace. Was that unusual behavior? No, Jennifer said. Investigators had been trying to examine if there was any way Ramona could have come home late after the party while Jennifer slept. That night, Jennifer said she had fallen asleep watching TV, and around 1:45 a.m., her father woke her up and told her to go to bed. They were both on edge that night. A Marine helicopter had crashed overseas, and they wondered if Jason might have been on it, although their fears were unfounded. Jennifer's bedroom was near her parents' room. She would later testify in court she hadn't heard anything that night. Investigators acted on the warrants and began searching Jeffrey's belongings on May 27th. At the insurance company, they found a 9mm gun in the third-floor attic, a space where Jeffrey reportedly often went to have his affair. Finally, authorities were able to go into his bedroom and peel back the new carpet to look deeper at the original space. They could see white paint and what later tested to be blood. This from the police report. Quote, the coroner's office then checked from the bedroom down the steps towards the laundry room and then out to the garage. Along the way, they found several more spots that field tested positive for human blood. They did find what appeared to be a drop of blood on the front of the laundry tub, as well as a larger spot on the stairway in the garage. This area appeared as a large circular area, as if the victim had been placed there, and blood from her head made a pattern on the front of the step. Soon, the anonymous tip and the rumor of Jeffrey's affair with an employee at his work would be confirmed directly by one of the parties involved, Mary herself. Mary admitted she and Jeffrey had been in a relationship for 2 years. Mary was a mother of 2 who had been divorced for less than a year from her ex-husband. Their marriage lasted 18 years, but it appeared to be stormy and ended abruptly. In her office at the insurance company, Mary apparently fell for Jeffrey. They reportedly had sex in the third-floor space, where employees weren't allowed. According to Mary, Jeffrey talked about a future with her. But first, he wanted to buy a boat and a condo for Ramona before they went their separate ways. Mary was skeptical. According to the police report, Mary, quote, stated she did not really believe that Jeffrey Krotine ever had any intention of leaving Ramona for her. But the relationship was still beneficial for her. Jeffrey paid some of her bills and helped with her household problems. Mary also opened up about issues at the State Farm business and the lawsuit that Jeffrey brought up to police earlier. He was suing a former colleague who left his insurance business and apparently took some of his customers with her. The colleague left Jeffrey's business because there had been some sort of fallout between her and Jeffrey. The colleague also had ill will towards Mary, too, Mary believed. Like Jeffrey, Mary also had an attorney who accompanied her on the police interview. Investigators interviewed more people who were in Ramona and Jeffrey's inner circle. Other witnesses painted a stark picture of Jeffrey's personality. Few had anything nice to say about him. He was different, a word that kept popping up. Strange, rude, arrogant. He had a temper. No one ever saw him hurt Ramona or recognized any signs of domestic violence in their relationship, but he was known to bang his fists in a fury at work. Ramona's friends and family didn't appear to be close to him or to enjoy interacting with him. One woman who knew the couple for a long time and who had previously worked for both Ramona's fudge business and Jeffrey's State Farm insurance company, said her first thought when she heard of Ramona's death was that Jeffrey must have killed her or hired someone to do it. She never liked him, she told police. Using cell phone records, police discovered something else about Jeffrey's behavior on the day Ramona went missing. Jeffrey called Distilla Water to dispute a credit card bill. He was, quote, very arrogant and argued a lot, the employee remembered. His behavior and the timing stood out to the employees when they saw on the news that Jeffrey's wife had died. Right after Ramona's funeral, Jeffrey went back to the office and asked his accountant to transfer Ramona's IRA certificate to his name. The accountant, Robert Malone, quote, felt this was unusual as he could do this any time. Jeffrey also had him redo his taxes to update Ramona's status as deceased. Malone seemed to wonder why that was on Jeffrey's mind. He thought anyone else would have been too busy grieving their wife's death. Jeffrey Krotine was ultimately charged in Ramona's death. He would go to trial not once, not twice, but a total of 3 times. His first 2 trials, both in 2004, ended in hung juries. The Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper reported about the challenges facing prosecutors as they tried to convince those juries. The couple's adult children's testimony went against the prosecution's theory that Ramona had come home, Jeffrey had savagely beaten her, and then drove away with her body, where he shot her and dumped her in the parking lot. Jennifer, the couple's daughter, slept about 12 feet away from her parents' bedroom and hadn't heard any screams, gunshots, nor sounds of an assault. The following day, the couple's son, Jeffrey Jr., hadn't seen blood or suspicious signs when he went into his parents' bedroom. Jeffrey's defense also argued that there was a lack of direct evidence in the case. There was no evidence found in Ramona's car tying Jeffrey to the crime. The gun that was found in Jeffrey's office didn't match up to the one that ultimately killed her. It didn't make sense, the defense argued, for Jeffrey to have kept the gun at work instead of thrown it away if it had been the murder weapon. And the defense argued that the carpet from the bedroom had not been cleaned and only contained tiny flecks of blood, which didn't fit into the cause of death since Ramona had been bludgeoned multiple times, likely creating a bloody scene. In 2005, Jeffrey was back in the courtroom, with prosecutors seeking one more time to convict him. He was also charged with tampering with evidence. His third murder trial captured national media attention, with 48 Hours filming it every day for one of its episodes. By now, Jeffrey was 57 years old. The stress he felt during these 3 trials compared to being back in Vietnam, he later told the media. Jeffrey never took the stand at any of his trials, but did proclaim his innocence on the 48 Hours episode. There, he said, quote, "My life since my wife's death has stopped. It's like I'm in the Twilight Zone. I didn't murder my wife. I'm innocent." Prosecutors outlined how they believed Jeffrey had lost control and murdered Ramona when she came home in the early morning hours from the party. He bashed her head into the bed, which, they said, explained why Jeffrey later destroyed the headboard, dragged her unconscious body to the car, and drove somewhere to shoot her and stuff her body into the trunk. He parked the car at the transit station's parking lot and then staged the scene to make it look like a robbery, as if somebody had taken the money from her fudge business. Then, according to prosecutors, Jeffrey underwent a bedroom makeover to hide evidence of the crime. He repainted the bedroom, replaced the carpet, destroyed the headboard, and gave other furniture away. The prosecutor argued that Jeffrey's odd behavior spoke volumes. His actions speak louder than words. His inactions speak louder than words. They are calculated actions. They are not coincidences. They are criminal behavior. One key bit of evidence that fit into the prosecution's version of events was Ramona's shoes. Ramona had been found wearing socks that were soaked with her blood, yet one of the white tennis shoes on her foot was pristine white, no blood anywhere inside or outside. When had Ramona changed shoes? Or had someone put them on her feet? At the party, Ramona had worn strappy dancing shoes that night for the occasion. An expert witness for the prosecution, a former FBI agent, who helped write a manual for the Bureau on Criminal Profiling and Crime Scene Analysis, said the shoes were a sign of a staged crime scene. No robber would ever put the shoe back on a murdered victim, he said. The Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper reported that in the two previous trials, Jeffrey's lawyers, quote, seized on the doctor's opinion that Ramona had a bloody struggle with her attacker. This time, the doctor said she may have been knocked out before the bloodiest, skull-splitting blows were struck. That would allow time for her to be dragged from the house, bludgeoned, and shot. Throughout the trial, witnesses had in fact testified about suspicious things that raised the possibility that Ramona had been carjacked. Melvin Twining, an Expo Center vendor who had attended the hotel party, testified he saw something suspicious in the hotel parking lot. He described seeing a man who looked like he was stuffing something into a beige Toyota Camry, just like the one Ramona drove. Melvin realized the significance of what he might have seen after he learned of Ramona's death, according to the Cleveland Plain Dealer. But Melvin also said that he had not heard any screams or seen any signs of a struggle, and he couldn't say definitively that what he saw was a woman being forced into the car. Susan Ziegler, a friend who knew Ramona from the Expo Center, also testified about something chilling. It was information that hadn't been presented in Jeffrey's previous two trials. Someone had left a voicemail on Susan's phone at 6:45 a.m., the same day Ramona was shot and killed. It was very faint, Susan said, according to the Cleveland Plain Dealer. It was a woman's voice, and it said, "Help me." Then the line went dead. The voicemail ended. I went white, Susan testified. She couldn't recognize the voice, and neither could others with whom she had shared the voicemail. Other witnesses raised questions too, like how could Jeffrey have pulled off such a violent beating and murder of his wife? How had he gotten back home if he allegedly drove Ramona's car, with her body in the trunk, and left it at the transit's park and ride station? It was too far for him to walk, and authorities had interviewed the taxicabs without finding anyone who had given him a ride back. Mary, with whom Jeffrey was having an affair, testified that she didn't believe Jeffrey would hurt his wife, no matter how unhappy he was in his marriage. In my heart, I know there is no possible way he would have done anything to harm his wife, she testified. Jeffrey Krotine Jr.'s testimony explained why his father redid the bedroom carpeting right after Ramona's death. Mourning his wife's death, he said, Jeffrey had been drinking heavily and had spilled liquor and candle wax on the carpet. But according to the Cleveland Scene, the city's alternative weekly, the, quote, turning point in the third trial was the moment when Ramona and Jeffrey's other son, Jason, who had by then returned from Iraq deployment, took the stand. Attorney Richard Drucker asked him, if for 1 minute you thought your father brutalized your mother in that house, what would you do? Jason stared calmly back, suddenly a Marine once more, the publication described. His response, he wouldn't be here right now. Jason made it clear he would have taken matters into his own hands if he thought his father had murdered his mother. As the testimony ended, the defense and the prosecution made their final pleas to the jury. Did the evidence point to Jeffrey, an adulterous husband enraged enough to violently kill his wife and then stage a robbery? Assistant prosecutor Anna Faraglia demanded, hold this man responsible, not only for the death of Ramona Krotine, but for the victims left behind. Or was Ramona truly the victim of a robbery? Perhaps the victim of a killer who was still on the loose? They're trying to convict him because of the type of person he is. He's a strange bird, Jeffrey's attorney, Richard Drucker, told the jury. But a strange bird does not a murderer make. The jury began deliberating, and deliberating, and deliberating. The deliberations rolled into the fifth day. Prosecutors were clearly worried about the outcome of the third trial and offered a plea deal to the defense. The Plain Dealer reported that under the proposed deal, if Jeffrey pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of voluntary manslaughter, he would get a sentence of 3 to 10 years in prison. Jeffrey didn't take it. Instead, he decided to take a gamble, and it paid off. The jury finally returned with their verdict: not guilty. The Plain Dealer reported on the jury's confusion and emotions after the verdict. 10 jurors told the judge they believed Jeffrey was indeed guilty, but that prosecutors hadn't convinced them beyond a reasonable doubt. One juror told the judge she wanted Jeffrey to be convicted at the next trial. She began to cry when she was told there wouldn't be a fourth one. And another juror was reportedly upset because she thought Jeffrey was guilty, but went with the majority opinion instead of taking a stand. And so the mystery of who killed Ramona Krotine may never be solved, at least not legally. Jeffrey Krotine, who didn't leave the Cleveland area after he was acquitted, died in 2014 at the age of 66, according to his obituary. He had remarried, although his obituary noted he was the husband of the late Ramona. One of the commentators on his online obituary was their daughter, Jennifer, according to the Cleveland Scene. "You stopped being my father back in 2004. May you rest in your own peace," she wrote. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case. Did you agree with the verdict? Let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram at CourtJunkie, by tweeting me at CourtJunkiePod, or by emailing me at podcast@CourtJunkie.com. This episode was researched and written by Gabrielle Russon. If you'd like to hear these episodes without the ads and hear additional Court Junkie bonus episodes, check out my Patreon options at CourtJunkie.com/support. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/CourtJunkie. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.